Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this week's webinar of the Firearms Research Center's webinar. I am George Mocsary. I'm the director of the Firearms Research Center, and on with me today is Ashley Hlebinsky, the executive director of the Firearms Research Center. Um, Today, we'll talk to you a little bit about what we did last year in 2024, what our accomplishments were, and how we've grown the center. And then we'll talk about what we hope to accomplish in 2025, in this year. And then we'll open it up for Q&A, um, uh, answer any questions you might have, and just welcome any comments, things you'd like to see the center do, and so on. So, uh, we started the center in 2023. That's when our hard launch was, January 2023. It was established at the University of Wyoming College of Law. It's a university-wide center, but it's housed at the College of Law. And our goal is to bring diverse voices to the firearms discussion. You know, lots of the centers that are out there in the firearms field, broadly understood, um, focus only really on their little area. There's a law center, there's a public health center, etc. We're the only center that really aims to bring in all of the various disciplines, whether that's law. I'm a lawyer, history. Ashley's a historian, and a lot of the action in the field is happening at the intersection of law and history. Um, but we want to bring in the public health aspect, the criminal justice aspect, and so on. And our goal is to provide legal education and research on firearm issues across that spectrum of topics.
So I think I'll start a little bit talking about some of our key accomplishments this year, and then we can dive deeper into that. But to kind of piggy off of back off of what George was saying, we're a relatively young organization, and we're really pleased with how far we've come, especially since George is a full-time professor and I'm here as a contractor. So we are happy that we're able to expand our footprint, and we are looking forward to expanding even more in 2025. But last year, we kind of did a combination of in-person and online events and programs, and we've had a lot of success with that. We hosted a National Firearms Act conference, which I'll talk about on the next slide, in the fall, that had a really fantastic attendance. We try to, even with an in-person event, we try to always offer an online component to it, whether it's live or put up on our library later. We also were kind of the center. We were the mediator. We were the moderator for discussions centering around campus carry that occurred in the fall. And George will talk more about that. He was more involved with that than I was. We have expanded, as we're talking right now, to our virtual seminar series. We're trying to kind of get information out on a monthly basis and do a wide range of topics, which we'll talk about some of the disciplines that we've kind of discussed so far. We've been continuing to participate in events that aren't ours. So we've been traveling around the country and doing events with Duke Center for Firearms Law, the Cody Firearms Museum. George has been all over the country speaking in a lot of engagements. So we've been doing that. We are expanding our scholarship. That's a really important component to the research center. At the center, we tend to look at our role in 3 tiers. We obviously want to kind of aggregate scholarship that's already out there, because it's kind of spread all over the country. But new scholarship and students is very important to us, and public education. So we're expanding that with individuals filing amicus briefs, working papers, and we're adding kind of to our list of fellows around the country that have an expertise in firearms. We are expanding our online presence. If you haven't been to our website, it is really easy to remember. It's firearmsresearchcenter.org. Very grateful that that domain name was available, but definitely check it out because it's more than just a website that lists who we are. We've got comprehensive databases, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And then we're continuing to kind of cultivate the next generation of scholars with student engagement and placement pipelines. So we want to talk a little bit about the National Firearms Act conference. Now, I'm going to explain what that even means, because I'm not sure everybody that's on the webinar today knows what the National Firearms Act is. If you don't come from kind of the world of firearms law, but the National Firearms Act was a large federal regulation on firearms in 1934. It heavily regulated machine guns, suppressors, which are silencers in the law, and short-barreled rifles and shotguns. It's a topic that hasn't gotten a ton of discussion recently. After the Bruin decision, there have been a lot of dialogues around magazine capacity and different features, but the National Firearms Act is kind of because it's been around for so long, has been just kind of something that people know exists, but hasn't really been looked into in detail. So we wanted to do a seminar focusing around that. And I keep saying seminar, George, but I think those are the words we started with, because we really thought it was such a niche topic that it wouldn't have this kind of broad appeal. And we ended up calling it a conference because we had about 350 participants in person and online. We were worried about filling the room space, and we were almost hitting capacity and pulling in chairs from other rooms. So we were really happy to see kind of the interest in it. And we brought legal scholars from around the country, actually around the world. We did have a scholar that came as far as China, who had been doing research fellowships and working in DC until right before our conference. And so we covered a range of topics, whether it was silencers themselves, the history and technical evolution of the machine gun. We did have the former acting director of the ATF's NFA branch kind of kick off the conference, talking about the actual practical application of NFA and some of the history on that. And then there were several talks on the concept of taxation, because one component of the National Firearms Act is a tax on people who are purchasing those firearms, who go into the background check and all of that. There's a tax associated with it. So really interesting conversations. We were able to offer 5.5 hours of continuing legal education credit live. And we didn't have permission to post all of the videos, but they are available. Most of them are available online, and you can still get credit for that there. But it was really nice to see us host an event that's a little bit more of a niche topic and see so much interest in it. So as we look towards future events, we're kind of try to balance it between some of the larger topics that you hear, and then some things that maybe aren't being discussed as often.
So, one of the things that was so gratifying about the NFA event was its size, as Ashley said, which tells us that we're doing something in which there is an interest, maybe a latent interest, and the the event also got enough attention that we got some interest expressed to us about having a couple of what we called companion events. The first one was the night before, and it was a fireside chat in which Judge Lawrence Van Dyke of the Ninth Circuit and I talked about various things, various aspects of his judging, how he views being a judge and the role of a judge and why he judges the way he does. For those of you who are attorneys and who are in this field, you know that Judge Van Dyke has written several Second Amendment opinions that have gotten quite a bit of attention out there in the field. We co-hosted that fireside chat with the University of Wyoming College of Law student chapter of the Federalist Society, and we were also happy to welcome many of the members of the Wyoming chapter of the Federalist Society, and also the J. Reuben Clark Society at the University of Wyoming, again at the College of Law. Um, after our NFA event, we had a hands-on suppressor shoot. It was co-hosted with the American Suppressor Association. The Laramie Rifle Range was kind enough to host the event. And, going along with our ongoing goal of education and educating the public and the world and folks in the field and folks who are interested in the field, one of our goals was to have a lot of fun, but also to educate folks. How do suppressors work? Do they really sound like they do in the movies? What does a short-barreled rifle look like? How is it different from a regular rifle or a shotgun and so on? So those two events were piggybacked or adjacent to the event that got so much attention and made others want to come and work with us. Also, during the semester last year, during last semester, there was a large discussion at the University of Wyoming on the question of campus carry, something that has been a topic that's been coming up at various universities. Um, the Firearms Research Center was asked by President Seidel's office, University President Ed Seidel's office, to run point on several events and really to help lead the campus-wide and to a large extent statewide discussion about the topic. Um, uh, to start that off, I delivered some testimony to the University of Wyoming Board of Trustees so that the trustees know the facts in the facts related to campus carry, so that they know what the actual data looks like. There's a lot of talk out there. It's a topic with a lot of emotion. Um, and we believe that a good starting point for anything in the firearms realm, any discussion in this field, should be based on facts and data, wherever possible. So I shared that with the trustees, and then the center, Ashley and I, participated in various discussions on campus. One was a webinar where we discussed both facts and what the proposed rule would look like, um, why the rule was brought up, why the trustees asked the university to draft a proposed rule. Um, and then a town hall in person that was open to the University of Wyoming community and also the public at large, right? And we had a great attendance of folks just expressing their concerns, asking questions, and sharing their views on the topic. Um,
Sorry, my mouse was not cooperating. One thing that I just to kind of close out what George said that I found was really interesting in terms of the discussion with the campus carry was the fact that the policy that they were putting forward, a lot of people didn't realize what was already in place. And so I think one of the most valuable conversations that were had were just the fact that campus carry was permitted in some respects already on campus. People didn't really realize that. So I think as soon as people were able to kind of get that background information, I think it caused a really interesting dialogue from there. So I thought that was a kind of a fascinating component that people weren't realize what was in place in order to kind of have a larger conversation about what they were talking about. So that's just my 2 cents of something I found fascinating when we were having that discussion. We've
Again,
already mentioned.
our goal
Okay.
again in line of our goal of educating the world about what's out there, right? Most, as you said, most folks didn't know that carry was and still is allowed on campus, just not in the buildings at the moment.
And then this slide, you can see some of the seminars that we've offered thus far. I've already mentioned it, and we'll touch on it in a little bit as well. But this virtual seminar series we launched in the fall, and we're trying to cover, or sorry, the summer of last year, and we're trying to cover a range of topics. Obviously, anytime we do continuing legal education webinars, we get a huge response because of the ability for someone to get credits. We've had a ton of attendance on those. I mean, we're pushing 100 to 200 people on a lot of those topics. But we've also been looking at kind of museums, public education, history. As you can see on the screen, I don't want to just read through all of them, but we're trying to grasp on a little bit of things that have absolutely nothing to do with modern court cases or are not directly, a part of modern court cases to things that are going on right now, which you can see with Stephen Holbrook's talk that he did. And then most recently, we did a conversation with a professor who comes from the public health sphere. So we are working really hard to bring in scholars from around the country that have a completely different perspective than law and history, and trying to kind of give them a platform to continue their research because as we've said in the past, and you guys may not be, you may not have heard us talk a million times before on this subject, but it's difficult to get really solid research out there on firearms from a range of disciplines. And there's a lot of people around the country that are pretty siloed in their study. And so one of the things that we are trying to do here is create an outlet for them to be able to, showcase what they've been researching, have forums with different scholars at different universities through workshops. So we were pretty pleased to have somebody from the public health world, and we'll be having a couple of other disciplines here upcoming that will be represented. I mentioned the fact that a lot of times these scholars don't really feel like they have any colleagues within their university. And so we've been working to kind of reach out into the community. And one thing that George has been doing for a long time is the sixth annual Works in Progress workshop. Which I always have trouble saying that. There's too many. There's too much work in that. But that's been going on. It's a co-hosted event with the Duke Center for Firearms Law, which is slightly older than us. And I believe, George, you guys have been doing it since before the center was formally adopted here.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And it's a really fantastic day and a half experience. It brings in kind of, in a lot of cases, relatively new scholars. And they're basically just bringing papers that they're working on that they want to publish and putting them out to a larger forum to get feedback, to get information. I went to the workshop last year for the first time. I've been around for several years, but I haven't been able to attend. And I was really, sometimes I get a little down on some of the discussions that happen around firearms. And I was so pleasantly surprised at how collegial everyone was, and the ability to kind of have difficult conversations with people who definitely don't agree in the room. And I think it's a really nice opportunity for us to be able to partner with another organization that allows both of us to kind of reach into our networks and bring in people that maybe never would talk to one another prior to that. So it's a good workshop. We're hosting it this year, so it will be in Laramie. We go back and forth every year. I spoke at the Arsenals of History Symposium, which actually I started when I was running the Cody Firearms Museum. At the time, it was the only full scale firearms and material culture conference that was out there. We actually were initially brought together on a smaller panel at a larger conference, curators from around the country, some from England, and we realized nobody had ever invited us to speak together. And so we created this Arsenals of History Symposium. It goes on every year in Wyoming, and it's got representation from around the world. A lot of European research centers and museums come and participate. So I continue to have a presence there with the research center. And then to our suicide prevention initiative, that's been one of our biggest kind of public facing things that we're working on. We've got a suicide prevention portion of our website, and we've partnered with the Wyoming Department of Health, the VA. We had a big conference the first year we were around in 2023. And so because they came and participated in our conference, they hosted a very large suicide prevention conference this year that we participated in, with both having a booth and also speaking.
Uh, the center, the center doesn't take a position on any particular issue. We welcome all views, and we're one of two centers out there that will really publish and welcome views from all around the spectrum on this issue. Um, but the individual members of the center, of course, we have our views on things. So senior fellow Dave Kopel, who's a familiar name in this field, he's been working in it for quite a while, has written about 120 articles and maybe 15 books on the area. Um, we worked on some amicus briefs last year for the U.S. Supreme Court and also for lower courts. But the ones that I'll mention here, you can see it up there. Um, the Smith and Wesson versus Mexico, or originally it was Mexico versus Smith and Wesson, but on appeal the name changed. Uh, he and I wrote an amicus brief related to the applicability of the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. We also worked on a brief along with Senator Cynthia Lummis's general counsel on a brief on behalf of Senator Lummis and several other senators, quite a few law professors and others in the Garland v. Cargill case. Um, that was the case about the bump stocks and whether the National Firearms Act could properly be read to include bump stocks. And we argued there that it could not, and the court agreed with us. I also worked on a brief with Brian Knight from the Mercatus Center. Now, the Mercatus Center, you may perhaps never heard of. It's more of a regulatory, a business and a marketplace-oriented think tank. And we worked, he and I, Brian Knight from there, and I worked on a case in National Rifle Association versus Volo. And we argued that it was improper for New York's Department of Financial Services to use its regulatory power to essentially bully insurance companies and banks into not doing business with the NRA. Our argument was that, look, the NRA is an advocacy organization. Whether or not it likes it, what it does, whether or not NYDFS likes it, what it does is perfectly legal and has every right to use financial services that are out there, assuming it does so legally, and so on. Uh, we filed a brief there. That was a case in which the ACLU joined the case rather early at the district court stage. Um, and then actually the ACLU did the oral arguments in the case, and that case ended up 9-0. And I especially like to highlight that case uh, as one that shows really how cross-functional we are, right? And not only are we working with the ACLU and coordinating amicus briefs and working on arguments, but also working with an entity like the Mercatus Center, which has nothing to do with firearms, but um, with whom we're willing to come together and are interested, not just willing, but want to actively come together and bring knowledge and work for what's right in the area. Another key area of our website that we're especially proud of and is really important for a research center is our working papers page, where we've published 5 original pieces of scholarship on the page. And in line with our being at an academic institution, one of our goals is to publish student work that might not otherwise see the light of day, that might not otherwise be published. So we publish work from students, and we professionally edit it, um, and format it and get it up onto the website. So it really is a real genuine publication that gets the kind of review that publications should. We also publish work from established scholars and practitioners in the field. And you see an example of each on this page. One that might catch your eye there is the first one by Professor Bill English at Georgetown. Some of you may have read the attack on his work that came out in the New York Times, um, essentially saying that he was dishonest and so on, that his work wasn't exactly correct. And we published a response to that and other follow-on attacks by Professor English, and that's up on our website, and it addresses the issues that were raised by the New York Times and others. And all of this is out there, and we welcome everyone who's interested in the topic to read what the New York Times has to say, read what Professor English's other critics have to say, and then read what Professor English has to say in response to that. And you decide, you judge for yourselves.
I mentioned trying to kind of connect scholars from around the country earlier, and we are kind of trying to also bring them into the fold kind of as a more formal participant in the research center. And so we are continuously adding fellows from different backgrounds, different disciplines to the research center. They're welcome to contribute to our forum, which they do a lot. We discuss their scholarship, and they've all been really, really great. But we added several last year, and so this is the group on the screen right now. And just to give you a little bit of background on each, I'm going to kind of run through some of their accomplishments in their bios. But the first person is Tim Shao, and he's a scholar practitioner who is currently a college professor, master firearms instructor, and law enforcement officer. He's written extensively on the philosophy and ethics of gun ownership, as well as religious views on self-defense. And he's had several scholarly articles on gun ownership that have been widely reprinted in introductory anthologies and textbooks. And he's also the author of numerous op-eds that have appeared in Human Events, Public Discourse, The Federalist, and other outlets. We then have Nick Johnson, and he teaches in the area of gun control, gun rights, contracts, and environmental law. He's a 1984 graduate of Harvard Law School. And in addition to his book, Negroes and the Gun, he's the author of the Firearms Law and the Second Amendment, Regulation, Rights, and Policy that he co-wrote with David Kopel, whom George already mentioned, George, Greg Wallace, who you can also see on the screen, and Donald Kilmer. And it is something that George utilizes in his course that he teaches on firearms and the Second Amendment. Johnson frequently contributes to the media, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, National Review, Library of Law and Liberty, and a whole host of other outlets, kind of on both sides of the political spectrum. And he's testified before Congress on firearms law, and his work has been cited by the Supreme Court. We then have Drew Stevenson, and he is a law professor at South Texas College of Law in Houston, where he teaches professional responsibility, legal ethics, administrative law, and law and economics. And his academic writing about firearms, and he's been incredibly active with us and working on a couple of different projects. But his academic writing on firearms law and policy, he approaches the topic from a personal commitment to nonviolence. We then have Gregory Wallace, who was also a co author on the Firearms and the Second Amendment book. He's a professor of law at Campbell University School of Law, where he teaches constitutional law and firearms law. And he's published numerous other articles on firearms law and the Second Amendment, and has provided frequent commentary at conferences, symposium, as well as in news report, media interviews, and op-ed columns. His research primarily focuses on the legal conversations around assault weapons and those bans, firearms ballistics, and mass public shootings. And then finally, we have Joyce Malcolm, and she's a historian who focuses on individual rights and legal history, who serves as the Patrick Henry Professor of Constitutional Law and the Second Amendment. She's also an emerita at the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University. In addition to numerous articles in law reviews and the popular press, she's also the author of 9 books. She was cited in the landmark Supreme Court cases of District of Columbia v. Heller and McDonald v. the City of Chicago, and has been awarded numerous research grants from, among others, the Harvard Law School, the American Bar Association, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. I wanted to read the bios just because we're really happy to see people who have such a background in firearms from different perspectives, want to participate in a research center that is so young. And we feel very grateful that they've been willing to lend their expertise and participate in all of the different forums that we offer. So, with existing scholars, obviously comes the other part of it, which is cultivating a kind of new future leadership in the study of firearms. And so, George offers a course on firearms law and policy. And right now, we do a lot with the law school, obviously, but we do also have communications with the business school, and most recently are working with an engineering student. But if you're not familiar kind of with some of the difficulties of studying firearms in the United States, there aren't a lot of programs that if you want to study guns from a bunch of different perspectives, that you can go. You kind of have to tailor make what you want to study and apply it to whatever department or field of study that you're working in. And so we're trying to provide an outlet for students to be able to kind of take the research, work with all the people that we have affiliated with the center, and move forward with it. And we also are, when we look at firearms and law, especially with our students, we're not just looking at Second Amendment policy and Second Amendment law, but also people who are interested in getting involved in the firearms industry world as a general counsel or product liability or trademark infringement, trying to provide kind of a firearms base for whatever type of law you'd want to practice.
One of our biggest accomplishments last year was really expanding our online presence and expanding our website. There are a number of areas where we've expanded, and all of that is somewhat brought together in the forum. So the forum itself, we published 82 posts from 20 different experts in the field. The forum is more than a blog. It's a page where we both share our thoughts and share views, and more importantly, invite others to share thoughts on a recent case that came down or a topic that's being discussed or what have you. We also put up announcements. For example, about regulatory changes. We have an attorney in the Washington, D.C. area who posts regulatory announcements for practitioners to come and take a look at and learn when the regulation of firearms export, for example, is changing. We also put up there announcements about when we have a new working paper come out. As we said, we had about 5 working papers come out, and we hope to expand that to at least twice that many this coming year. We announced the working paper there. When legal briefs are posted, to our brief bank, which is another aspect of that site, and that'll get a large update in the next month or two with several more briefs. We announced that there. So really, it's a public forum where we inform the world of firearms, again, not just in the area of law, but more broadly than that, about what's going on legally, historically, social issues, and so on.
And then in addition to that, we've got our video library, and all of our webinars, as long as we get permission from the speakers, are uploaded pretty quickly to our video library, which you can see on our website. And they also possess, we also include any of the conferences that we have recordings from. So the NFA conference, almost all of the talks, you can go and see them online. We've got some pretty good setups in the rooms that we use so that we can provide this information. People can get CLE credit where it's available. And so we'll just be continuing to grow that this coming year.
One of the things that we're especially proud of, and one of our goals, is to become the law school for the University of Wyoming College of Law, to become the law school that creates firearms attorneys. And when we say firearms attorneys, we don't just mean those doing Second Amendment litigation. It includes those, but it also includes those working for the industry, working as general counsel, those who become experts in import-export. Uh, and put that to good use in the firearms industry, making sure that everything there is done well. Since the war in the Ukraine started, the industry has been responsible in helping Ukraine defend itself by sending firearms there. The industry needs attorneys to make that happen and to make it all happen legally. So you see on the slide here just a sample of the students who we've moved through our placement pipeline and helped them get positions working in the firearms space. They've worked for Franklin Armory and Orchid Advisors on the industry side, Mountain States Legal Foundation. Um, one of our students, who's a research assistant, got a guest editorship at the Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy, and we've got two others that aren't on there who got similar positions with Texas Review of Law and Politics. Uh, we're going to place more students this year, and we plan to ramp up our placement pipeline to really be a resource for the Second Amendment space. And our goal is to expand not to expand beyond the Second Amendment litigation space and the industry space to the regulatory space. The ATF needs attorneys as well. Law enforcement needs attorneys as well. One of our big partners recently have been public defenders. One might not think of public defenders as Second Amendment litigators. Actually, they're one of the most common Second Amendment litigators out there, defending their clients in criminal cases, making Second Amendment arguments and non-Second Amendment arguments. Uh, this past year, we worked with Smith & Wesson to get started its first annual research and writing competition for law students. We announced the writing competition on our forum. Again, that's the outlet where we announce all of the big things going on at the FRC. We also announced it on social media and spread the word to multiple law schools and other blogs to let the world know and let law students know that the competition was out there. Um, Again, this is part of our goal in expanding the field, into developing the field, and to make it more accessible and more open to as broad a number of students in this case as possible.
And just a mention that research and writing competition, that's still open. So if anyone on here is wanting to submit anything, I believe March 1st, George, is the deadline.
March 1st, correct.
So if anyone wants to do something for it, you're welcome to apply. Another way we expand our reach is through our partnerships, and this kind of speaks a little bit more to that relationship that we have between being pure academia and having a public kind of a public facing role in the firearms discussion. And so we recently started a relationship with the University of Wyoming Precision Shooting Club. One of the goals for the center at some point is to be offering firearm safety. When we were working on the campus carry town halls, we also worked with the UW campus police to update and improve our safety information for people who are looking for that information either at UW or beyond. And so working with the shooting clubs at the university is just a way for us to kind of help continue that education and to work with the actual students who are participating in the sport. We work with a couple of different divisions of the VA. When I spoke at the Wyoming Department of Health's conference, it was in connection with the VA discussing at home safe firearm storage and then also out of the home firearm storage options for those who want to voluntarily put their firearm in with an FFL while they are in a time of crisis. And so we kind of talked about that, raised awareness of that. We do have that on our website. The Wyoming Department of Health was actually one of our first partners that I believe kind of predated the actual official adoption of the center. So we're always, we love working with them and helping that. A more recent partner we have is the UW Violence Prevention Center. George, I believe that was that conference in the fall where we provided information on Men's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yep, exactly.
At our first conference back in 2023, we had Walk the Talk America present one full day for suicide prevention. And so we do still partner with them. If you're not familiar with Walk the Talk America, it is a nonprofit that works between both the gun community as well as the mental health community. They work with the gun community to reduce stigmas around mental health so that they have tools to seek mental health care. But then they also have clinicians that are on staff that work with the mental health community to better understand firearms owners. So firearms owners feel like they can come and, safely communicate what they're going through without jeopardizing their Second Amendment rights. It's a especially big issue in Wyoming. And as death by suicide is the largest firearms related death in the country, it's a huge national conversation and they work all over. And then to continue that kind of role of safety, we also work with the National Shooting Sports Foundation's Project Child Safe, which discusses and provides gun locks and resources, not just for having firearms in the home where there are children and trying to prevent accidents with that, but then also it has a suicide prevention component that partners also with Mental Health America. So most of our big relationships and partnerships are really kind of with the whole public health, trying to reduce stigma side of the firearms discussions in order to hopefully reduce firearms deaths into the future.
Yeah. One thing I'll add real quick here relating to the student engagement aspect is although not official partnerships like these are, we're working with someone at the engineering school and someone at the business school to enhance employment opportunities for university students, so not just at the College of Law, but in the engineering space, right? The firearm design space, for example, and the marketing and finance space as well.
And our final slide, and of course, this is a big one that we could probably talk about for hours, but looking at what we want to do in 2025. So obviously the center has long-term goals that we would love to see, and we're happy to talk about that too. But trying to be realistic in 2025 and see what we can accomplish. With the center really being staff-wise, George and I, we are really happy with the growth that we've had, but we're kind of hitting max capacity on the impact that we can have in terms of events and content. And so we were very fortunate at the end of last year to get a donation that will fund a full-time research director staff position. It's something that we've been wanting since we started and know that it will help us just kind of expand that reach, being able to pull scholarship from around the country, but then also to produce scholarship, possibly data analysis to kind of keep us relevant and up to date. Since the firearms discussion in America is something that's constantly changing and there's constant lawsuits, it is a full-time job to have someone be able to kind of pull that information and make that information accessible to lawyers, the media, legislators, whomever needs to access it online. We want to be able to be providing real-time updates. And so having that person is going to be a huge benefit to us. And we are starting the process of getting the applications up and going so that we can have someone hopefully partway through the year. And then, like I said, this person is a big deal for us. So it allows us to enhance our research capacity. When we are looking at a few more conferences, we've got our Duke work in progress workshop coming in June. We'll definitely have a fall symposium. We're looking at possibly doing something with public defenders. We did get funding from a foundation last fall that will allow us to expand and do more than just one major conference a year. So those are kind of the big things. Oh, and it's not on the slide, but the other really big thing that we're doing is we've been working with several researchers on creating a comprehensive historical database of all firearms laws. Currently on our site, you can find amicus briefs and search that with the different courts. But we are going to be adding, hopefully pretty soon, a full database so that you can access all firearms laws throughout American history. And we'll be adding expert witness reports to that. And basically just all the information and research that's publicly accessible now, but not easy to find unless you know how to search the court system, putting it on our website so it's easily searchable. So that's going to be a huge addition to our website in 2025. But I think those are the highlights for what we're trying to work on. But definitely open to any comments and suggestions and questions.
Yep. And we welcome you to use the Zoom's Q&A feature here to ask any questions or share any thoughts you might have.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I won't type an answer back because I can I can respond directly. When we were doing our campus carry town hall, they were coming in so fast that I was struggling to get back to everybody. Uh, Ted would like to know: will we be including firearms court decisions and briefs?
So yes, the answer is yes. Our brief bank includes for every case for which we include amicus briefs, we also include the parties' briefs and the opinion that came out in the case if there is if there was an opinion. And we'll continue to do that for the cases that we add. We have a new batch of cases coming, like I said, in the next month, perhaps two. And one of our one of our goals is to add additional information about each of the cases in the future as we build capacity to do that. And thank you, Mark, for the compliment as well. Please let me add my thanks to Ashley's thanks. Oh, okay.
And we've got Antonio Machado. Sorry if I apologize if I butchered your name. I think you follow me on Instagram. I know you've reached out to us in the past. I visiting us would probably not be that exciting. George's background is misleading. It's not. We don't actually have a library, but we'd love to talk with you some more on the work that you're doing. That was one thing that we got asked a lot about when we first started was whether or not we were going to have a real brick and mortar facility at the university. And the short-term answer is no, because so much of it's held online, and Wyoming sometimes is a bit difficult for people to get to. So it'd be cool to have a really cool archive and firearms display, but probably not something we have anytime soon.
But that said, we welcome collaborations and involvement with the FRC from anyone like our colleague here in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. We welcome submissions to the forum. We welcome working working paper submissions. We welcome videos for our video library and webinars on various topics related to firearms. They don't have to be necessarily related to the United States and to the questions that are going on in the United States. We believe that what's happening in Brazil, for example, is as important as what's happening here, and really the two areas inform each other. Um, we also welcome, attendance at our conferences from everyone on this list. If you are not on our email list, because you're here, you're probably on our email list, but in case you're not, please please go to our website, firearmsresearchcenter.org, and sign up, or just send an email to frc@uwyo.edu, and we will add you to our list. We always try and open up all of our events as much as possible to be both online and accessible via Zoom, as well as in person. So we really do want this information to get out there to everyone. Our goal is not to be an exclusive club, that only welcomes certain people, but really to be available to everybody, to everyone in the world whose interests touch on and are related to firearms. Pat Webb at the Virginia Citizens Defense League is expressing how happy she's been to have been working with us on the historical database. We thank her and the VCDL for a contribution that makes that possible. The VCDL and has been a pleasure to work with, and we love working with with anyone who's out there. So please feel free to approach us, and we'll be more than happy to get on a call or a Zoom to see how we can work together. All right. Well, with that, thank you everyone for coming. Again, if you're not on our email list, please do get on via our website or by emailing us. If you know anyone who's interested, please do the same. That'll help you be in touch and be informed about what we do. We try and send about monthly newsletters about what's gone on in the past month, what we're doing, and what we're looking to do. Sometimes that turns into 6 weeks. In the summer, it's a little bit slower, and so on, as we do our work here and also have our day jobs. But please do sign up, get in touch, and stay informed. And we promise from our end to work with you in any way you can to get you what you need in this space.
And also, just as a plug for next month, if you're on our email list, you'll get the notification probably next week. It'll be March 7th at 12 o'clock Mountain Time. And we'll be partnering with the Heller Foundation. And Evan Todd, who's a survivor of the Columbine mass shooting, will be here to kind of talk about his personal experience. So we wanted to get the, advertising for that event out way earlier than we normally do, because I think that one's going to be a really powerful webinar. So you just keep an eye out for that in the next week or so, and that Eventbrite link will go up, and then that'll be on March 7th.
Thanks, everyone. Again, please stay in touch, and we are at your service.